Hello, everyone. I am honored and excited to be presenting another class with you in the EA Zoom meetings. It's always a pleasure to be here with all of you. I get so much out of this community, and I hope you do too. So today I am talking about the Aries archetype through the eyes of the tarot. If you don't know me, if you're not familiar with me, then tarot is my thing. I am Kimberly. I'm known as Kimberly Stargazer, the Empress of Eclipse Tarot. And today we are talking all about the Emperor, the Empress's consort in the tarot. So let's get started. So as you know, this is a number 4 year. So 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 0 equals 4, the number 4. And that's aligned with the Emperor of the tarot card, the tarot deck. And it aligns with Mars and the fire sign of Aries. So this is also aligned with, there's a connection with our rising sign as well. And we're about to enter Aries season in like just a little over a week from the time of this recording. So this is very relevant, but we're kind of influenced by the Aries archetype, the Emperor archetype throughout the year 2020. So I felt it very relevant to talk about this topic with you all today. So I had to start out with a little bit of fun. When my 12-year-old son saw me working on this presentation, he has an Aries sun, and so he wanted to share his input, and he wanted me to make this slide very Aries-like. So I had to add the fire element here. This is what he had to say about the Aries archetype. He says, they're impulsive, you don't care what people think, and you do whatever you want. So I've always referred to him as my little Aries fireball. And as you can see, he's living up to that standard. So before we get really into the Aries archetype, I want to talk about where we've come from. So as you all know, as you are all astrologers or studying astrology, Pisces is the sign right before the sign of Aries. Pisces being the last sign, the ruler of the 12th house. And last year, 2019, was aligned with the influence of the Hanged Man, the number 12 card in the tarot card deck, as 2019, when you add those numbers together, you get the number 12. So last year, and with the Pisces archetype in general, I'm just going to touch on it a little bit. I called this From the Universe with Love because it's important to understand the Pisces influence as we look at the Aries archetype, because you know, no energy is in a vacuum all by itself, right? We need to know where we are coming from. So the Hanged Man is part of the constellation in the tarot that is aligned with the number 3, with Venus, the Empress, and then the Hanged Man, which is number 12, which reduces to the number 3, and the Universe, which aligns with Saturn, and that is the number 21. So 2 plus 1 reduces to 3 as well. So these cards are relative, they're related. There is a similar vibration with these influences. So last year, and with the Hanged Man influence, we had a gestation period. It was a hidden creative process, like being in the womb and attached by the umbilical cord, still connected to the all, to source, creative energy, whatever you like to call it, the higher power. It's that conception, conceptualization, connection, unity. It's a new formulation that's still bound by a structure. It rules illusion, miracles. It can be a little existential. I heard that from a lot of people that were feeling kind of an existential crisis or kind of formulating new beliefs last year, some confusion. But it was really very much about a holding pattern necessary for a viable formation. This card rules, the Hanged Man rules the rock bottom energy. If you get to such a place that you have nowhere else to go but to see things from a whole new perception and surrender. So this is what we're bringing into the Aries archetype, the archetype of the Emperor. And I like to always, when I talk about the Emperor, I always like to remind people that the Emperor is the number 4 and the Empress is number 3. And the way these two cards work together, the Empress looks to the Emperor and the Emperor looks back at the Empress. So he is being informed by her. The Divine Feminine is informing and connecting with, kind of handing off the energy to the Divine Masculine. And it's a very different kind of energy when it comes to the Emperor and the Aries archetype. It's separate, it's new independence, it's more singular, energized, and ultimately it's given a mission. It's empowered new physical vitality, and it's the concept from the Empress, from that womb, that whatever was being created and that was kind of hidden is now given to the Emperor to animate, to bring to life, to give it life in the external realm through action, right? I like this side-by-side imagery of the Pisces and the Aries glyphs because it's, it kind of shows you the different kind of energy. It's very different energy. The Pisces energy kind of comes together. It's the two fish kind of swimming, right, in opposite directions. And then with the Aries energy, the ram, it is all coming out from a central focus, right? It's kind of coming out of the center. So with the number 4 that is aligned with the Emperor card, it aligns with a constellation in the tarot that connects the numbers, the numbered cards in the major arcana, which also relates to the minor arcana cards. That are experiences that can be prevalent when we are, when this influence is activated in our lives. And collectively, this energy is activated for all of us in some way. And we may feel it a little bit more around Aries season every year when it's Aries time on the equinox. So this constellation is the principle of personal power and leadership. And I love this image of, it's like a knight with the light shining on him, where he feels kind of infused with that purpose. He's given that mission, kind of looks like he's given that mission from the Empress, that he needs to be courageous and bring something to life, or come in, act in defense of something that is meaningful. So this is a new foundation or establishment. It can be a new materialized rule of law. A mission gets to complete, a desire gets to be fulfilled in the external reality. It's kind of energy coming out. It's not so kept hidden or within like it is with the Empress energy and the Pisces energy. It's much more direct when it comes to Aries. But this change, this emotional change, is delicate. It's easily tainted, and the weakness can be revealed. Physical power dominates. And these are, what I'm talking about here is what I'll share a little bit later on as well. These are the things that kind of come to the forefront, the way the energy plays out often through this archetype, through the 4s in the minor arcana. So the 4 of Cups, the 4 of Discs, the 4 of Wands, and the 4 of Swords. But ultimately it's a constitution, new stability is kind of coming into life. And if you think of the sign that comes after Aries, that's of course Taurus, right? Ruled by Venus. That is that more stabilizing energy. So when we consider the signs that come before and after a sign, it really adds context to the way the energy of that archetype operates and where it's coming from and where it will lead to next. This is our invitation to become a leader, to maintain our own power, and to empower others to do the same. So it has this element of kind of that spark of inspiration. Not so much like, you know, the other signs like Sagittarius perhaps, but this is just the beginning, that cardinal energy, that initiation of the fire signs. The constellation is the crown, which is a symbol of expanded consciousness, recognition of one's own power and sovereignty. So it's like just the beginning of, and that courage to act and to be willing to kind of dare to do something new and pioneering with this energy. It's more of a personal power energy and leadership. And so it's quite interesting energy. So this is the Emperor aligned with, with the Aries archetype, but also the planet Mars. And this is not the same this is not true for all of the major arcana tarot cards. Several of them, there is a tarot card that aligns with the planet individually and one that aligns with the sign, the zodiac sign separately. But this one is very simple. It's very simplified. It's not quite as complex as the Piscean archetype. And so this is what Aleister Crowley, who is the creator of the deck that I use, this Thoth deck that you may recognize if you're familiar with the tarot. I like what he says about the Emperor here, is energy in its most material form with the idea of authority. And Mary Kay Greer, from her book, The Tarot Reversals, says this is a card of virility. This is the energetic inseminator who projects their will outward. So if you look at the imagery, there's so much, the tarot cards are so rich in symbolism that, you know, there could be, you know, really long classes that go into depth into every tiny little detail in the imagery because there is so much here. But this card, which is different from all of the other cards, it's very almost monochromatic, right? It is very, all the different, you know, similar shades of color, the reds, the oranges, the yellows. There's not a lot of different colors. It's very direct. It's very simplistic in that sense, right? The arms and the head of the Emperor form a triangle and his legs form a cross. Relating to the Sanskrit roots of language associated with head and age, both youth, which we think of with Aries, right? Kind of a youthful expression, but also the maturity, right? Like the leadership quality, those who are have the courage to lead, requiring some kind of maturity. The Emperor archetype relates to, because of that same Sanskrit root, relates to the words like Caesar, Tsar, Sir, Senior, or Signor. And it's associated with military, theory of government. Crowley was had a lot to write about how this card in particular has a lot to do with new constitution, new development of new kinds of government, which I find interesting with what's happening in the world at this time for all of us. It's beginning an enterprise or a new stage of life and initiation. It can be the extension or expansion of a realm of dominion or territory. You know, back in ancient times when there was a lot of expanding of the territory through the emperors that lived during those times. We can see that very literally, right, throughout history. Self-discovery and inner revelations are possible too, unveiling a new identity, because this is considering the Pisces element, which so much is going on within, right? Hidden creative processes with these out as a new identity, a new kind of expression within us. And this is symbolized too by the shield that's resting at his leg that is planted on the ground with the double-headed eagle. And so it shows, that is an image, a symbol that shows this, the more subtle aspect of the Emperor and the Aries archetype that we don't often consider, which is that it is the outer and the inner identity, ultimately wanting to, in a way, integrate, right? In the way that we express ourselves, in the way that we direct our energy, in the way that we use our free will. So you may have noticed the lamb that was laying docile at the feet of the Emperor in that card. And the Emperor and the Aries archetype are very much about being in defense of the innocent, the meek, the vulnerable, the marginalized, the underdog, if you will. Awareness of that innocence must be protected. It's a natural instinct that comes, it's being informed by where it has been, right? From where it has, the Emperor knows it doesn't come from nowhere, right? It's coming from, it's being informed from the Empress archetype, from the 12th house, from the unconscious is informing it. And so this is our natural instinct, our quick reflexes, trust in the self, and remembering that connection to the whole. And that plays a part in this defense or this protection of the innocence. It can come out in distorted ways, right? When we are embodying our Aries archetype and we're in defense of something that is unconscious to us, like a defense mechanism or behavior that can be unhealthy as well. I like what Ziegler has to say about this aspect of the Emperor, which is a deep understanding and a constant consideration of the will of the whole are necessary. A ruler with these qualities is filled with a tremendous compassion, which will allow him or her to sacrifice the self for the good of the whole. So I'm kind of dissecting the symbols that are present in the Emperor card because there's so much depth to each one of these symbols. And the fleur de lis, which I may, well, probably am mispronouncing, it's this beautiful symbol that represents and aligns with the springtime, the new energy, that new life springing to life, that outward expression that we see with like springtime flowers. But the fleur de lis is a symbol of protection, perfection, light, and life. It's a French symbol of royalty and imperial dignity. And it's associated with the iris. And this is an image of an iris from my garden. I love, that's one of my favorite pictures I've ever taken of a flower. And then, of course, if we're talking about the Emperor and we're talking about the Aries archetype, we all know the ram. And I like to use these symbols that are present in our daily life that we can kind of recognize. So in the US, this is a common truck, you know, that we see. We see these commercials, these advertisements, and it is a ram. It's the ram, and it has that, that ram head as the emblem on the vehicle. And their motto is built with honor, forged with pride, guts, glory, ram. And I thought that was really cool to incorporate with the Emperor and the Aries archetype because it's just very simple and it's very much in alignment with this archetypal energy. So this is an image which was actually difficult to find. Crowley, when he was creating his the Crowley Thoth deck, he used a lot of Himalayan animals as the symbols. And the ram that he chose for that card, the Emperor, was specifically the Himalayan ram, the Tar, because it is it's very bold, right? It's a little more rare. They live in a secluded part of the world, up in the mountains, but it's wild, courageous, and a little bit secluded. And so, Crowley even goes as far to say is that can live in lonely places. And that can be, we can have that sense of loneliness when we are using our personal power when it comes to the Aries archetype, right? It can be a little bit lonely because we are pioneering our own path forward. We are given our own mission to bring forward, and we're following our own will. It's kind of a much more personal energy when it comes to the Aries archetype. And this is the ram that is in the image behind the Emperor's shoulders. And the Emperor holds a scepter with the ram head on it as a symbol of this kind of power. That's kind of the nature of the Emperor, but it's also a source of this power, being willing to forge his own path, right? And to go his own way. So the quality of the Emperor's power is, when I see that, what the Emperor is holding in his hands, whatever you read about the card, to me, it looks like almost like a bomb, right? Or like a grenade, which I shared in this image here, because it shows that, symbolizes that kind of explosive energy that can be possible with the Aries archetype, with the Emperor. It's quick, it's high energy, it's action oriented. Ultimately, it could be mission driven. It's quick, sudden, violent, assertive, and direct. It's kind of that quick energy. And it's designed to be swift. It's designed to be direct. That's the quality of the Emperor's power. It's necessary in order to establish something new, right? But by its nature, it's impermanent. This power becomes destructive when it burns, when it persists for too long, because that's not the natural design of this kind of power. This is the difference between lighting a campfire for warmth temporarily and a devastating wildfire. That's the difference in the energy. So it has potential to be destructive, but ultimately this quick infusion of power, this quick infusion of heat and action is designed to just kind of open up the pathway to move forward. So the Emperor, as I mentioned earlier, aligns with the planet Mars. And just as I shared at the beginning with the Pisces influence and the Empress constellation, the constellation of the cup, where the threes are involved, the Emperor is the number 4. So it also aligns with the tarot card that rules Scorpio, which is death and rebirth. And so this kind of brings to life and kind of shows the imagery of how this power can be used in different ways. And traditionally, we know that while with evolutionary astrology, we know Pluto as the ruler of Scorpio, Excuse me. I've been talking a lot. Traditionally, Mars was the ruler of Scorpio. So I find this interesting. The death card is the number 13, which reduces to the number 4 and relates to the Emperor card. So it also, in the death card, especially in this deck, the skeleton wears that crown, which is part of that expanded consciousness. Now that scorpionic energy is different. It's a different quality from the Aries archetype and the influence, the activation of the Emperor. But I found it, I wanted to bring that in for added depth, for added context of what the Emperor is designed to do. So the 4s in the minor arcana align with the 4 of the tarot, of the major arcana, the Emperor card. So these are symbols of experiences that we collectively, that are prevalent in our human experience, that align with that Aries archetype, with that Emperor archetype. And ultimately, if you consider the Emperor as the beginning, that start, that fiery start of the energy, that cardinal initiation of energy and the will, and directing that will outward, it's pretty easy to see how these experiences can kind of come to life. So the 4 of Wands, related with the Aries archetype again, is completion. It's kind of completion, like getting what you want. It's that kind of energy. There's more to it than that, but I'm kind of simplifying these cards for the sake of this general overview of the archetype and this constellation. The 4 of Cups aligns with the sign of Cancer, another cardinal sign. And this is luxury. So this is feeling like you have that, like you are being fulfilled. It's like a new feeling of emotional satisfaction, acquiring something in the material world that feels fulfilling in some way. The 4 of Swords is truce, aligned with Libra. So this is coming together to working together, using your will in combination with the will of others to come up with some kind of resolution. A new kind of resolution gets established. It's always with the Aries archetype, with the Emperor, it's always seeking to establish something new through the force of the will. And the 4 of Discs is power, aligned with the sign of Capricorn. And so this is where boundaries come into play, where that conviction can come into play, where one can express him or herself in the material world without being without the judgment being clouded by emotional turbulence. It's more of a conviction kind of power. And it's a newly established power as well. So I like to add in like an element of the cultural, the cultural pop culture, if you will, because I always notice, I'm always observing how some of these things really align with the energies of the tarot, of the astrology, how it's all interconnected. So the singer Pink as part of the soundtrack for the movie Alice Through the Looking Glass has this song called Just Like Fire. And this is just a little bit of the chorus, but I felt like it kind of wraps up this Aries archetype for us. It's about burning up the way, lighting the world up for just one day. It's that impermanent energy. And so it's just like magic, flying free, and it disappears when they come for me. So it's not so much of a long-lasting energy. It's more of that burst of energy, that quick energy, that direct energy, that will to assert ourselves. And it, I don't know, I liked these lyrics, that how they align with the Aries archetype and the Emperor, and how it kind of brings it all together in kind of a fun way. It's actually, the whole song is actually pretty interesting because it talks about, you know, the lyrics kind of touch on the past and the unconscious. And the video, she begins by hanging from her silks, if you're familiar with the singer Pink. She's hanging upside down at the beginning of the video, and then she moves through the looking glass and then starts singing this song about fire. And so it's kind of like that new rush of energy that we get with the Emperor, with the Aries archetype. So this is kind of energy that we're going to collectively be experiencing throughout the year. And it's that new establishment of people, you know, I feel like we're all kind of waking up to our personal power and kind of directing our will. It's a little bit more combative, right? With that kind of forceful energy of the Emperor. But there's so much to learn through the Aries archetype. So I got through that a little bit quicker than I expected. So if you have any questions, let me know. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I can go back to some slides if you'd like. I hope I wasn't talking too fast like an Aries energy. So if no one has any questions, I will leave you with this. This is how you can stay in touch with me. I always love to connect on the social media, on Facebook, Instagram, and on YouTube. And of course, my website is eclipsetarot.com, and I'm Eclipse Tarot everywhere. So I hope you pop in and say hello and let me know that you, I know many of you have reached out to me from my last class, which I truly appreciate. I love connecting with new people. Does anyone have any questions?
I just have a comment.
Yeah.
This is really fascinating. I kind of peripherally know a little bit about tarot, and I find it very, very interesting, especially with this being a, you know, beginning year. Good year to learn more about it.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you. Very informative.
Oh, good. Thank you. Yeah, I find it interesting how, you know, I've been doing tarot for a long time. I was doing tarot long before I was always interested in astrology. But before I really got into studying astrology, I was very familiar with and very into the tarot. And to see how the tarot and the astrology and the numerology and it just kind of all connects and brings a new perspective, a new way of seeing it. And I really like the visual representation of the symbols through the tarot, because for me, I'm a very visual person. And so I really like learning more and going deeper into the astrological aspects and archetypes and planetary symbols through the tarot. It's very fascinating. And I think to see the Aries archetype as like that divine masculine, as the Emperor, and seeing the symbols that align with what we know in astrology as the Aries archetype, it just kind of gives it a personality, you know?
Exactly. Thank you.
You're welcome. Does anyone else have questions? Here, I'll go back a little bit.
Kimberly.
Yes.
Oops. Are you still going?
Yes, I was just going to go back to the slides, but we are done. If there are any questions, I'm taking questions.
Oh, okay. So I'll just go check for you. One moment.
Okay.
Okay, no questions from me. Anyone else in our meeting have any questions? Okay, that's it. Well, thank you so much, Kimberly. Excellent presentation. It wasn't very long, as long this time. You caught me off.
Oh, I know. I had that Aries energy, like I was in fast motion, I guess.
Okay. Well, thank you so much from all of us, and we're looking forward to seeing you again. So, unmuting everyone, please thank Kimberly DeRosa, everyone.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.